Welcome everybody to WiseTake.com MMA DFS podcast. I'm your host Jeff, aka Wigspitter, aka Wiggy Wiggleston, coming at you with another UFC 228 fight card that we're going to be going over for DraftKings. But before we get into that, real quick, if you're not a WiseTake.com subscriber, head on over to WiseTake.com and check out our All Sports monthly packages. That will give you unfiltered access to the unbelievable Slack chat that we have, where the community shares some of the knowledge that not only they've learned or they've come across, and just it's awesome just to be in there to chop it up with these guys that have learned so much throughout the Major League Baseball season. Getting into the NFL season, there's just so much stuff. Plus, you will gain access to all the premium content for all sports. PGA, NASCAR, NFL, NBA, NHL when it comes around the corner. Of course, MMA, and then NHL is on the plate as well. So get on over, pick up a monthly package, and you'll gain access to the Slack chat feature that we have. All of our, majority of our content providers are in there throughout the day, chopping it up with all the subscribers. It's awesome. And if you want to just pick up a MMA event pass, those are $4.99. You'll gain access to all the premium content. Plus, we have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week chat room on the website that you'll gain access to. Plus, the live stream the day of the event in the morning. It's usually 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. So you have plenty of time to watch the video if you don't catch it live, to be able to go over and help build your rosters before lock. So now that we got that all out of the way, let's go jump into the fight card. We have the first fight of the UFC Fight Pass early prelims. We have Jeff Hands of Steel Neal going up against Frank the Crank Camacho. Both these guys are heavy-handed power strikers. They're going to be winging some ham bones at each other. Jeff Neal's salary is $8,700. Frank Camacho's salary is $7,500. At the time of this recording, Jeff Neal is a -175 favorite. Frank Camacho is a 155 underdog. This fight is very intriguing. I believe Jeff Neal roughly fights, or normally fights about in the 185-pound division. He's coming down to 175 to fight Camacho. They both have submission ability. They both have decent takedown defense, so it's a possibility that their grappling will negate each other, and they will just stand and bang, because that's what Frank Camacho likes to do. Frank Camacho has been stopped 3 times in his career by knockout. Jeff Neal has been stopped himself once. Both these guys have power in their hands. For value, Frank Camacho, I like Frank Camacho. He throws an insane amount of punches. If you look at his last few performances, he has thrown well over 100 strikes each fight. Jeff Neal throws 5.7 significant strikes per minute, or he lands 5.7 significant strikes per minute. So this has the makings of if it goes 3 rounds, it has the makings of to be a very solid DFS play. If you look back on the fight records, Camacho versus Brown, Damian Beatdown Brown, if you stack that fight, that was a lightning in the bottle. I got lucky on that when I stacked it, and I won a decent amount of money that weekend. But if this fight goes 3 rounds and they're both throwing what they could potentially throw, there could be a high score between these two. Would I say stack this fight? I mean, if you're building 20 lineups, I mean, sure, why not? There could be nothing wrong with that. If you average it out, that's $16,200 per for both fighters. It's roughly $8,100. So it's a middle of the road salary if you average it out that way. But I won't make that decision until Friday, possibly Saturday morning when I start building my lineups. have a whole bunch of dummy lineups reserved. And I suggest doing that. Make sure that you secure your entries into contests early in the week, because a lot of the higher priced GPPs fill up, and then you're scrambling on Saturday in some of these lower GPPs where you're not the top price pool isn't necessarily as profitable. Excuse me. But I like Jeff Neal in this fight. I believe he's going to come out ahead. He's going to be the younger, stronger, taller, or bigger fighter, I should say, come fight day. Frank Camacho has been taking a lot of damage. He just absorbs a lot of damage. It's just ridiculous on how much it's going to wear on him. So I think Jeff Neal is probably going to pull this fight off. I like Jeff Neal for GPPs and cash, but like I said, this is my first look. Now moving on to the next fight, we have, oh man, messed that one up. Sorry guys. Moving on to the next fight, we have Roberto Sanchez, Little Fury Sanchez, going up against Jared the Monkey God Brooks. Jared Brooks is actually stepping in for Ryan Benoit, who had to pull out for an injury. I'm not exactly sure what that injury is. Roberto Sanchez, he doesn't necessarily set up his takedowns too well. Jared Brooks' salary is $9,000. Roberto Sanchez is $7,200. And if you remember Jared Brooks at all, he knocked himself out against Jose Shorty Torres, which is pretty funny because he was winning that fight up until that point. So if you take that into context, okay, I was just making sure that I had the salary correct, which I do. Roberto Sanchez doesn't necessarily set up his takedowns with too much. Like, he'll come in with a flailing jab, and then as soon as he gets his hands on you, he just drags you to the floor. Jared Brooks is a solid wrestler as well. So it's possible that the grappling exchanges are going to be heavy. There's going to be a lot of passes. Early on, I think it's going to be very dangerous for Jared Brooks with Roberto Sanchez because when they haven't started to sweat yet, there's a lot more grip on the skin. You know, he's going to be able to, you know, maybe latch on, maybe put it on the body triangle, and be able to stop Jared Brooks. Now, Jared Brooks is a -335 favorite. Roberto Sanchez is a 275 underdog. I like Roberto Sanchez as a underdog play here at 7,200. He has huge submission upside. He has 7 submission wins in his career. Jared Brooks has been submitted 2 times in his career, so he's taking this fight on short notice. Can the stars align for Roberto Sanchez? Yeah, for sure. And at 7,200, I definitely think it's a great GPP play. Jared Brooks at 9,000. He's going to need a stoppage or a large amount of takedowns in order to pay off his salary, or like a knockout, a flash knockout. Roberto Sanchez has never been knocked out. He has been submitted once. So I'm not sure if I'm definitely going to fade Jared Brooks at 9,000. I mean, for a couple $100 more or a couple $100 less, you can get guys with a little bit more higher ceilings for GPPs and definitely safer floors for cash plays. So I think Jared Brooks is going to be on my fade list. I don't really know for sure yet. Like I said, it's still up in the air. I'm still researching as we speak. Moving on to the next fight, we have Irene Aldana going up against Lucy Pudilova. Aldana is a typical Mexican fighter. She's very aggressive, come forward striker. She has solid takedown defense. Pudilova is a striker as well. Both these ladies are going to have high volume strike outputs. I think Aldania's her striking is going to be a little more crisper, and I think she's going to be able to tattoo. Now, I'm not going to say light Pudilova, but I mean, if she's able to stick that jab and just constantly, just make Pudilova eat that jab, it's going to be a long night for Pudilova. I think it's going to go to decision. Aldania's salary is $8,200. Pudilova's salary is $8,000, so it's fairly even that way. It's also fairly even when it comes to Vegas. They're both, let's see, Aldania's minus 125 favorites, and Pudilova is a 105 underdog. Like I said, I don't see this fight. I mean, it's possible that Aldania could get the stoppage due to strikes. Pudilova has 2 losses in her career to Lena Landsberg, but all by decision. She's never been knocked out, never been submitted. Aldania has been knocked out 2 times in her career, so that's a possibility, but I don't see Pudilova putting it on her that much. I think it's going to be more of a stand-up striking battle. So theoretically, it could go to decision, and at that salary, $8,200, if they have a solid amount of strikes, which it's possible, they both land over 5 significant strikes per minute. So they could have a high amount of strikes, and they could be a sneaky middle of the road play. I like Irene Aldana for the win. Now moving on to the next fight, we have Jim Miller going up against Alex White. This is one of those ones I'm stuck on because, man, most of these aging UFC fighters like Jim Miller, I'm drawing a blank. Mike Pyle. These guys are just, I mean, it's the end of the road, man. It's the end of the road. But if there's one glaring hole or one thing that Jim Miller has, and he has tenacity. He definitely has the wrestling to keep himself in the fight. Alex White does have tendency to get taken down in his fights. He ends up on his back a lot. And if that happens, if Jim Miller is able to control the fight without getting knocked out, then it's a possibility that Jim Miller can win the fight by decision. It's just the fact that Jim Miller's been knocked out a couple times fairly recently that just doesn't look good. I mean, he got knocked out pretty bad. I mean, he's been knocked out by Joe Lauzon. He's been knocked out by who was that the other fight? It escapes me at this time, but Alex White isn't necessarily the greatest fighter, or I think this is a fight that Jim Miller could win. And at 76, so Jim Miller's salary is $7,600. Alex White's salary is $8,600. Craig White's in the next fight. Alex White's salary is $8,600. He's a minus 145 favorite. Jim Miller's a 145 underdog. Can Jim Miller win this fight? Possibly. Can Alex White win this fight? Sure. Can you count on, if you were to bet your house on Alex White, would you be comfortable doing it? No. No. It's one of those plays where you're just sort of like coin toss action. Heads or tails, here we go. And I think that's what it's going to turn out to. Jim Miller could, definitely be on his way out, but is Alex White the guy to send him on his bon voyage journey? It's said to be seen, but I like Jim Miller as a GPP flyer, value play, 7,600, definitely. Alex White's going to need a stoppage. Can he do it? Sure. Jim Miller's been knocked out multiple times. Alex White has 5 wins by knockout in his career, so it's possible. Moving on to the next fight is another one that's a similar type situation. We have Diego the Nightmare Sanchez going up against Craig Thundercat White. Diego Sanchez, hats off to this guy, man. He is one of the guys that, when he goes in there, he wants to put on a show. He definitely stands in the middle of the cage, invites his opponent in there, and just wants to wing punches until one or the other guys gets knocked out. Can Craig White knock Diego Sanchez out? Sure. Can Craig White submit Diego Sanchez? Diego Sanchez has never been submitted in his career. He's been knocked out 4 times. But then Craig White's been knocked out 3 times. He's been submitted 4 times in his career. Diego Sanchez's salary is $7,400. Craig White's salary is $8,800. I think Diego Sanchez has a chance to win this fight. I mean, this is one of those cards where, like I said, it's a UFC pay-per-view event. Sometimes the weird things happen. And I think Diego Sanchez could pull this fight off. I don't know. That's who I'm going with, Diego Sanchez. By submission. Moving on to the next fight. The first fight on the FX prelims. We have Charles Byrd going up against Darren Stewart. I have made some money betting against Darren Stewart. And I don't think it's going to stop here. Charles Byrd's salary is $8,900. Darren Stewart's salary is $7,300. I just don't. I mean, Darren Stewart looked good in his fight against Julian Marquez, but they were both gassed out. Like, I don't understand. Like, he was just, both of them were exhausted in that 3rd round, and then he ended up losing. Darren Stewart's he's a winner go home type of guy. He's going to put, everything on the line. He's going to wing punches. The problem is he does holes in his defense. Actually, he looked pretty good with his takedown defense against Julian Marquez, but I think Julian Marquez was lazy in his takedowns. I don't think Charles Byrd is going to have that same lack of effort when it comes to taking guys down. I think he's going to push through it, and he's going to be aggressive with it. And if it gets to the floor, I could see Darren Stewart getting submitted. Darren Stewart has lost 2 times by submission. Charles Byrd has 5 submission victories. So that's why I see how it's going to play out. Charles Byrd by submission, 2nd round. Charles Byrd's salary is $8,900. Darren Stewart's salary is $7,300. I personally will not roster Darren Stewart just because he's so flaky. He's not. You can't count on him. So I think Charles Byrd's going to win by submission, 2nd round. Moving on to the next fight, Jimmie Rivera going up against John Dodson. Jimmie Rivera's salary is $8,400. John Dodson's salary is $7,800. Rivera's a -150 favorite. Dodson is a 130 underdog. Dodson his career's on the decline. Jimmie Rivera is coming off a very quick head kick knockout against Moraes. That looked. I mean, I don't understand why he didn't it was wide open. I mean, it was pretty clear he was going to go for a head kick, and he did it, and he didn't see it, and he got knocked out. Is Dot's going to go for a head kick? Probably not. Dotson's one of those guys where he's in and out. He's going to stick and move. He's going to slip and rip. He doesn't necessarily. I mean, he has power in his hands, but I don't think he has the power at this age anymore to be able to knock guys out. I think his skills are diminishing. Jimmie Rivera, on the other hand, this has to be a bounce back fight for him, and he's going to have to put on a show. The only problem with that is Dodson, when he usually loses, it's usually by decision. So it's going to be a 3-round battle, and I think it's going to be close. This is probably going to be a coin toss of a decision, probably by split decision, and it's possible Jimmie Rivera does just enough to get the win, and regain some of his composure that he had, or his stature that he had before he got knocked out by Moraes. Now, moving on to the next fight, I like. Before I do that, let's see, Jimmie Rivera at $8,400. For a decision, I don't see him paying off his. I mean, he'll make value. Dodson at 7,800. If he wins by decision, like I said, he'll make value. So I think maybe if you're going to roster either one of these guys, I think it may be a cash play because they probably would have a safer floor than they do a higher ceiling. So that's what I'm looking at when it comes to this fight alone, if not completely fading it. I'm not exactly excited about a decision win. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have Aljamain Sterling going up against Cody Stamen. Now, this is going to be interesting because Aljamain Sterling looked really good in his last fight. Surprisingly, I not that I didn't think that he was going to do good, but the way he won was pretty. It was wow. It had the wow factor. Now, Cody Stamen, this dude is a solid striker, heavy grappler. Aljamain Sterling has proven that his wrestling is fairly solid. Is Cody Stamen going to be able to get the takedowns against Aljamain Sterling? Not sure. We're going to have to wait and see on that one. But the striking is what's going to be the difference here. If Cody Stamen can outstrike Aljamain Sterling, it could put him in a position where Aljamain Sterling is going to maybe look for the strike coming in, and then Stamen blasts for a double leg, or maybe gets a single high crotch takedown, something, and then lands those takedowns. Or it could just negate themselves and it just turns into a standing battle, which Aljamain Sterling on the feet is fairly dangerous. Cody Stamen hasn't lost by knockout or submission. Aljamain Sterling has been knocked out in his career one time. So Cody Stamen at 7,700 and Aljamain Sterling at 8,500. Could it go to decision? Possibly. Do I see this being a stoppage? Flash KO? I think if there was to be one, I think it would be on Cody's side. But he'd have to catch Aljamain on the way in and just be a flash knockout that way. But I think probability of this fight going to decision, it's pretty high. So I'm not necessarily excited about decisions, like I just mentioned earlier in the Jimmie Rivera John Dodson fight. From a DFS standpoint, maybe they're better cash plays than they are GPP plays, because their ceiling is not going to be as high, or have a high enough ceiling in a GPP for rostering, but they probably will have a better floor for cash. So they're probably more cash plays than they are GPP plays. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have Carla Esparza going up against Tatiana Suarez. Carla Esparza is a gritty little gal, man. She fights with some tenacity. But Tatiana Suarez is a freak of nature, man. Once she gets her hands on you, she definitely goes for that submission. She's going to be the bigger girl. She's going to have a 4-inch height advantage. Sometimes you would think that somebody who's taller will have issues with shorter fighters. I think she's going to be able to piece Carla Esparza up on the feet. I think Carla's going to definitely be a game fighter. Carla Esparza's salary is $7,000. She's been she's a plus 425 underdog. Tatiana Suarez's salary is $9,200. She's a minus 550 favorite. Now, can she submit Carla Esparza? It's possible. Will this fight go to decision? That's more probable, I think, in my eyes. I think this is going to turn into a stand-up battle, or if it does turn into a grappling battle, there's going to be a lot of exchanges on the feet, a lot of transitions from half guard to side guard, maybe some ground and pound for Tatiana Suarez, so she could be scoring points there. A lot of top control, but top control doesn't necessarily equate into fantasy points. What turns into fantasy points is the significant strikes, the transitions, of course, takedowns, and then, of course, if she can get the submission or the stoppage due to strikes. I can see that possibly happening, but at 9,200, she's definitely going to need multiple takedowns, at an above average amount of significant strikes, or possibly a stoppage in order for her to pay off her salary at 9,200. Carla Esparza's salary at 7,000 could be a cheap value punt for cash, because she's definitely going to be able to make it all three, or she has the potential to, I should say, to make it all 3 rounds. And at 7,000, if you punt it at 7,000, you can definitely fit a lot of other higher price fighters in your lineup at 7,000. All right, moving on to the next fight. We have is the first fight on the main card, which is Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Nico the Hybrid Price. Nico Price's salary is 7,900. Abdul Razak Hassan's salary is 8,300. Al Hassan's is a -145 favorite. Nico Price is a 125 underdog. This is a really exciting fight for me. I don't know who to pick. If Abdul Razak Al Hassan cannot stop Nico Price's takedowns, he's going to be in trouble, because Nico Price is dangerous when it comes to submissions. I don't think Nico Price is going to want to stand and bang with Al Hassan, because Al Hassan has insane knockout power. All his wins, all his 9 wins are by knockout, 100% finish rate. Nico Price has 8 wins by knockout, 3 by submission. I think he's going to definitely want to get this fight in close and make it dirty. Take Abdul Razak Hassan down and work for a submission. I think Nico Price, if it's early, Nico Price will definitely try to go for that takedown and get that submission. But if it goes on into the later rounds, I think Al Hassan will have more than enough opportunities to knock Nico Price out, and I think that has a possibility of happening. I think both these guys are GPP plays. I think you're going to have to hedge your lineups. Maybe if you're building multiple lineups, do one with Al Hassan and one with Nico Price. That would be probably something you'd want to focus on. But I think they're both very decent GPP plays. If you're leaning one side or the other, you can use that other for your cash lineup if you wanted to, because you can get away with a loss if it does happen. But I think Al Hassan is going to come away. If he can keep the fight standing, I think he's going to have the probability of getting a knockout against Nico. But if Nico can get the fight down, then it's going to be a submission victory for Nico Price. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have Jessica Andrade going up against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. If you watched Jessica Andrade's last fight, holy crap, was she vicious. Oh my God, she was just insane. Karolina Kowalkiewicz is a very solid striker. Karolina Kowalkiewicz's salary is 7,100. She's a plus 340 underdog. Jessica Andrade's salary is 9,100, and she's a minus 425 favorite. Andrade has very aggressive and vicious takedowns. Kowalkiewicz, her takedown defense is fairly solid, but so was Tisha Torres's is takedown defense too, and she just ragdolled her throughout the fight. This is going to be I think this is going to be a very, very interesting fight from a grappling standpoint. If Karolina Kowalkiewicz cannot stop the takedowns, it's just going to be nonstop, one after the other. and she's just going to just keep pounding her. You know, if Carolina Kowalkiewicz can keep getting back up, she's going to get dumped back down, which is a DFS gold mine, because you can just be racking up the takedowns from Jessica Andrade. Which would be very, very, very exciting. Now, in her, like I said, in her last fight against Tecia Torres, she had 10 takedowns. She had 1 reverse, 8 advances. It was just ridiculous. She had 92 significant strikes. Against her fight against Claudia Gadelha, she had 141 significant strikes, 4 takedowns, 5 advances. I just think she's made some adjustments to her fight game, and I think Carolina Kowalkiewicz is in it for a world of hurt. I like Jessica Andrade for cash and GPPs. Can Carolina Kowalkiewicz catch Jessica Andrade, knock her out? She hasn't shown that she has too much power, but she does have 1 knockout win in her career. And Jessica Andrade has been stopped 2 times by knockout. So is it probable? Sure. Can it happen? We'll have to see. But I think Jessica Andrade is going to just be too much of a bulldog and just manhandle Carolina Kowalkiewicz in this fight. Now moving on to the next fight. This is another replacement fight. We have Zabit Magomedsharipov going up against Brandon Davis. Zabit's previous opponent, I can't remember who it was, had to back out due to injury as well. Brandon Davis is a stand-up fighter with decent takedown defense, but going up against a guy like Zabit, who's just he's just on another level when it comes to takedowns and his tenacity when it comes to taking guys down. Zabit's salary is $9,400. He's a minus 1,165 favorite. Brandon Davis's salary is $6,800, and he's a plus 750 underdog. Do I see this fight lasting long? No. Do I see Brandon Davis possibly winning? Anything could happen. That's all I can say. Both these guys have 1 loss by submission in their career. Brandon Davis does have 2 wins by submission. So could it happen? Sure. Anything could happen in the cage. I mean, these guys have 4-ounce gloves on. These fighters have 4-ounce gloves on, and once they lock the cage, nothing's stopping them besides the ref or their corner throwing in the towel. But I think Zabit's probably going to land multiple takedowns. At 9,400, he's probably going to have to score a crap ton of those in order to pay off his salary. He averages right around 5.5 takedowns per fight and 4 advances per fight. So plus the significant strikes is a bonus. So he could definitely score at 9,400 to pay off his salary, especially against a guy like Brandon Davis taking in on short notice. I think Brandon Davis could stifle some of Zabit's takedowns initially, but I think it's just going to be too much. And then by the second round, he's going to be too tired to defend it, and then probably succumb to Zabit's pressure and just get possibly stoppage by the ref due to strikes. Second round. Now moving on to the next fight is a very, I don't know, I like Nico Montano. Like, her story is awesome. She's always been the underdog in every single fight that she's been in. She's always been counted out in every fight that she's been in, and she's come out ahead. And this is not going to change. She's $6,600 salary on DraftKings. She's a plus 800 underdog. Valentina Shevchenko is $9,600 in salary, and she's a minus 1250 favorite as the challenger. Nico Montano's a champion. Take that into context. But at the same time, a lot of people have been speculating that this weight division, the 125-pound weight division, was made for Valentina Shevchenko. As long as she went down to that class, she was going to dominate it, which is what she's shown. She's definitely beaten a lot of. I mean, not only beaten her opponents, but in her last fight against Cauchera, man, that fight was brutal, man. I mean, she should not have, like, the ref should have stopped it probably 35 strikes in, but Mario Yamasaki just was, it was horrible. It was horrible. Her last loss came against Amanda Nunes, but fighting at 125, I think she's just too dominant of a fighter. Her salary, like I said, is $9,600. Nico Montana's salary is $6,600. If you wanted to take, if you're building multiple lines, I definitely would make one with Nico Montana, just because of the fact, I mean, the story itself, always the underdog, you know, never believed in, definitely has the opportunity to win the fight. But I think Valentina Shevchenko is just on a whole nother level, and I think she's going to probably rule this division for a while. I think she's probably going to get an early stoppage, possibly late first round, early second round, possibly by stoppage due to strikes. But I think Shevchenko definitely going to win, and it's going to be brutal. Now moving on to the main event, we have Tyron Woodley versus Darren Till. Now this is a pretty interesting matchup because Darren Till looked like shit in his last fight against Stephen Thompson. Stylistically, they played patty cake for 3 rounds or 5 rounds, whatever it was. It was just horrible to watch. The fight could have gone either way. Coin toss, decision. Tyron Woodley has been nicknamed Ty Quill because his fights are so boring. Like his fight against Damian Maia, that was horrible. His fight against Stephen Thompson, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Tyron Woodley, but his fights don't necessarily, unless he gets a stoppage. His last decisive win was against Robbie Lawler in 2016, which was a knockout. Majority of his fights are decision. So Darren Till, on the other hand, as well, his last few fights, like he had a decision win over Stephen Thompson, threw 38 significant strikes in 5 rounds. And then before that, he had the real, like the defining moment in his career where he knocked out Donald Cerrone. But he hasn't really shown much. He didn't show much in the Stephen Thompson fight. Is this a hype fight? And this is where we find out where Darren Till really is in the 170-pound division before he moves up to 185. It's possible, but at the same time, like, you can't count him out. Who do I think's going to win, or who do I want to win? Oh, man. From a GPP standpoint, Darren Till's salary is $8,100. Tyron Woodley's salary is $8,100. Would I stack this fight? No, because both these guys have shown that they are boring fighters, that they can put on a snooze fest of a fight. The winner could possibly score of this fight. The winner could possibly score 70 points, 80 points, maybe. Right? It'd be value, but without getting a stoppage, I don't see them being on the optimal lineup. I don't think that they're going to score well. So this is actually possibly a fade fight for GPPs, and just try to use, unless you have 8,100 at the end of your salary. I mean, it's probable that you can fill in with one of the two, but you'd have to build multiple lineups because the fight could go either way. They both have solid takedown defense. They both have low output striking. So, I mean, you're playing with fire when it comes to building a GPP lineup with either of these two fighters. Am I excited to watch the fight from an MMA standpoint? Yes, because I want to definitely see what Darren Till has against a very aggressive grappler or a very established grappler like Tyron Woodley. And then what can Tyron Woodley do against a very dangerous striker? Stephen Thompson is a dangerous striker as well, but he's more of a counter striker. Darren Till's the same thing, similar. So could this be a repeat of the Tyron Woodley, Darren Till, Stephen Thompson fight? Possibly. But I think Tyron Woodley's going to do just enough to win by decision. I think it's going to be not necessarily a boring fight, but I don't think it's going to be, from stylistically, I think it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to lead to a decision. And I think Tyron Woodley, it's going to be and still. All right, that was my first look breakdown of UFC 228 for DraftKings. If you guys have any questions, or if you want to hit me up on Twitter, you can follow me at JEFPO. You can follow us at wise_take on Twitter. If you're listening to us on Podbean, if you're listening to us on iTunes, leave us those 5-star reviews. It helps us a lot, and we really appreciate it. It helps us with the continuing doing these free recordings, talking about DFS, and especially I appreciate you listening to me talk about MMA and DFS as well. For the Wise Take Nation, I'm Wigspitter. As always, be safe and make that money.
Yes.